Hey guys, Jay here with Word of Advice TV, and in this video I'll be going over the top 5 air conditioner problems and what you could do to fix them. Now I just want to point out that this is going to be more of a reference video, so if you're watching this because your AC is not working and you have no idea where to start, I have a different video called AC unit not turning on and how to fix it. There I go into a lot of details, step by step troubleshooting. It's a pretty simple video that you can follow along that can help you narrow down the problem and hopefully fix it. And this video itself is a shortened version of my video of top 10 AC problems where I go over about 30 different problems and what you could do to fix them. But in the comments section of those videos, I still get so many questions of people asking me how to do something, and I already have a video that explains it thoroughly, how to do it, how to fix it, how to find the ratings and whatnot. So I'm making this video, top 5 AC problems, as more of a reference video. Every single problem I'm going to be listing, I'm going to be directing you to a couple of videos that can help you with that specific problem. Anyway, that's it for the intro. Let's begin. Problem number 1. This is by far the most common AC problem there is. In fact, I even have a video called The Most Common AC Problem, and that's what it's about. Problem number 1 is a bad capacitor. The symptoms of a bad capacitor are usually pretty easy to spot. What will happen is the fan inside the house is going to be running, but it's going to be blowing hot air, or basically room temperature air, and the unit outside will not be running at all. And if you stand by it when you turn your AC on, every 30 seconds or so, you might hear a buzz, like the air conditioner is trying to start, but it fails to start. If you see something like that, that is almost for sure a bad capacitor. Another one, which is a little bit more tricky, is when the fan inside is working, and even the fan outside is working, but the compressor is not working. So when the fan runs and the compressor runs, they make a little bit of a different noise. The fan, it just sounds like a car window open, just air blowing. But the compressor, it makes more of a rumbling sound. So usually you should be able to hear the difference if it's just the fan on or if they're both on, the compressor and the fan. So oftentimes what happens is a customer will tell me, hey, everything is working great, but the house is not getting cooled off. And when I get there, yeah, the 2 fans are working, but the compressor is not because the capacitor is dead. Once I replace the capacitor, everything fires right up. So if you think that the problem you're having is a bad capacitor, I have a really good video where I go over everything about the capacitor, how to replace it, where to find it, how to buy the right one, how to read the ratings on it, and all of that. Everything that you need to know about replacing a capacitor, I have in that one video. And if you have a really old air conditioner that has 3 or 4 capacitors in there, then you might want to watch my video on how to combine capacitors. That one might help you out with that because that tends to be a little bit more messy. And lastly, if your capacitor is totally rusted out, just full of rust, and you can't read anything on it, so you don't know which capacitor to get, I also have a video for that of how to deal with that and how to find the right capacitor for the unit if you can't read anything on the capacitor. I will leave links to all of these videos in the description section of this video. And moving on to problem number 2. The second reason why an air conditioner stops working right is because it is low on refrigerant. Unfortunately, this problem is a little harder to deal with, and most likely you will need a technician to come out to get that fixed. And the most common symptoms of a unit being low on refrigerant is when everything is running, the fan inside is running, everything outside is running, the fan and the compressor, yet the house is not cooling off. Or maybe it is cooling off, but it just never reaches the set point. If you have your thermostat set to, let's say, 75, it never gets there. It just hovers around 78 and it struggles to go down. That could be a sign that your unit is low on refrigerant. But before you jump to that conclusion, one thing I would try doing is washing down the condenser unit. It might be dirty. If you're not sure how to do that, I have a video for that as well. Maybe after you wash it down, that might just be all it needed. Or if you haven't replaced the furnace filter in a long time, try replacing the filter and see if that makes a difference. If you did that and it's still not cooling, there's one easy test that you can do just to confirm that it's not cooling enough, and that is to measure the temperatures in the ductwork by the furnace. So let's go inside and I'll show you real quick what I'm talking about. Okay, we're in the house and we're gonna measure some temperatures. I'm gonna use a probe thermometer like this. You can use any thermometer as long as you're gonna be able to stick it into the ductwork somehow. But we just wanna get the temperatures between the supply and the return. Well, actually this is the return. Usually wherever your filter is gonna be. So our filter is right over here. That's gonna be your return. And whatever is coming out from the furnace, that's gonna be the supply. So we want the temperature difference between the two, which should be, on a normally working air conditioner, it should be somewhere between 15 to 20 degrees. So let's try it. You can insert your thermometer into one of these canvases, these flexible things. And if you're worried about making a hole in it, don't be. I mean, if you think about your vents, they're this huge, a gigantic hole in the duct. That's what a vent is. So you making a tiny hole inside of this rubber thing, that's not gonna do anything. So don't worry about that too much. I mean, you don't wanna make the hole too big, but just a little size hole like this, that's fine. And just give it a minute or so, or until the temperatures stop moving. This one is pretty steady. I mean, it might fluctuate just a little bit, but let's say it's gonna go down to about 71 degrees. So our return is 71. And if we look at our supply, there's nowhere where we can put our thermometer in. This rubber thing is not over here. And sometimes you get lucky if this duct has ever been cleaned, they'll leave little plugs on your ductwork, little black plugs. You can just stick a thermometer in there. But I am not that lucky. So my options are either drill a small hole somewhere in the supply trunk, a little bit higher. You don't want to be drilling where the A coil is, not even close. Go higher, like either here or here. Stick your thermometer in and get a reading. So what I'm going to do is simply go find a vent, and I'll stick my thermometer into the vent and see what temperature we're getting. Okay, so we found a vent in the bathroom. Let's see what kind of temperature we're going to get coming out of the supply. So our return was about 71 degrees. And our supply, we're gonna want at least 15 degrees lower. And by the way, I do have another video where I take a temp drop like this on a different furnace. So if you want another example, you can check that video out as well. I'll leave that in the description too. So we got to about 57 degrees and it really slowed down. It's going down really slowly. But just because we're not at our 15 degrees, that doesn't quite mean that this is bad yet. You have to take a few different readings in a few different spots. So you can try a few other vents or maybe the ductwork in the basement. Get a few different reads before you come to a conclusion. Let's see if this will make a difference, even if I just move this thermostat over here. Because sometimes the airflow is a little bit stronger on the sides of these vents instead of the middle. Okay, so I gave it another half a minute, and as you can see, we got down to 56.1. So we're exactly at 15 degrees. And I bet you if we checked the supply ductwork down in the basement, if I were to drill a little hole there, that would probably be even a little bit lower. So as long as you're in the range of 15 to 20, that's a good sign. That means your air conditioner is working well, it's cooling well. If it's below that, let's say it's 10 degrees or even 8 degrees difference, that means there's something wrong. Either the airflow is restricted, that's why I suggested replacing the air filter, or you're low on refrigerant, and that is why it's not cooling down enough. So that's one quick little test you can do yourself to see if your AC is performing like it should. Okay, we're back outside, and as I mentioned earlier, if this is the problem you are having, most likely you will have to call a technician because this is a little bit more complex to deal with. But if you're curious to know how it works, I have a video on how an air conditioner works, just a simple basic explanation. You might find that interesting, and I also have a video on how to check AC pressures. You'll need a set of gauges to do that. And I have a couple videos on how to recharge the refrigerant on an air conditioner. So if you're interested, you could go ahead and check those out. And next up, we have problem number 3, which is a plugged condensate drain. Luckily, this one is the easiest to fix, and usually the air conditioner works just fine when this happens. The symptoms of that is everything is working great, the house is cool, but when you go down to your furnace or air handler, there's a big puddle of water under it, and you're wondering why the heck is that happening? Usually, it's simply because either the hose, the condensate drain line, or the PVC pipe is plugged, or the fitting, where it comes into the A coil, is plugged up with bugs or dirt or whatever else, leaves. And all you have to do is clear that out and your leaking problem should go away. And let's just go back inside real quick and I'll show you more about what I'm talking about. Inside of the house, on top of the furnace, we have the A coil, and on the bottom we have a drain pan where all the condensation collects. And then all of that condensation goes down this line right over here, goes into this trap. You can even see water dripping because the AC is running right now. It goes into this trap and then flows into the floor drain right over here. And if we look at the back side of the unit, here's the fitting. this is where it screws in and where all that water starts to come from, and then it goes down this pipe. If it's PVC, this can either be PVC or a clear plastic hose, which is a little bit easier. That one you can just take off and you can see everything. You can even unscrew the fitting. When it's PVC, it's usually all glued. So your options are either to cut it somewhere and then use a coupler to put it back on to glue it back together. Or an even easier method is to simply get some compressed air and blow backwards inside of this pipe. So if there's anything stuck, usually whatever is stuck, it's going to be right at this fitting right here. If there's anything stuck in here, you can blow it backwards into there and a bunch of water will come gushing out. So this system has a PVC condensate drain line. I also have a video where there was a clear hose and how I cleared that one out as well. If you want, you can check that video out. Okay, and problem number 4 is a bad control board. The symptoms of that vary, but usually the furnace or the air conditioner are going to start doing some really weird stuff. For example, I've been out to a house where the control board, this happened to me a couple times, the control board turned on both the furnace and AC at the same time. It would be sending power to both of them. So both of them running at the same time doesn't get much accomplished. Or you can have a situation where the control board does not send power to the fan motor inside. So this unit will be running just fine, but the fan inside is not getting any power. And what happens then is everything freezes up. The A coil on top of the furnace there, that will freeze up first, and sometimes it could turn into just a solid block of ice. But by the way, if your unit is freezing, it's not necessarily because of a bad control board. I have a video where I talk about 8 reasons why it can freeze. So before you jump to any conclusions like that, make sure you check that video out. Another symptom could be that the fan motor just stays on all the time in the furnace. So regardless of what you turn off or on, the fan inside just runs and runs and runs. It's stuck in the on position. So the control board can do funky stuff like that. If your furnace is doing some bizarre things, then perhaps that control board is bad. I have a video where I show you how to simply troubleshoot the control board and see if there's anything wrong with it. Unfortunately, if you don't have a meter, then you will need to get one, because to troubleshoot the control board, you will need a meter. And reason number 5 is a bad condenser fan motor. This one is pretty obvious. The fan inside is running. The compressor usually will be running until it overheats. But the condenser fan motor on top of the unit, that will not be running. Oftentimes, if you turn your AC on and it runs for a couple of minutes without the fan running, if you go outside, you might even see some smoke or steam coming up from your unit. It is possible though that the fan motor is good and it's simply the capacitor that is dead, and that's why that fan motor is not coming on. So before you condemn a fan motor, make sure you check the capacitor. And if you notice this problem the very first time you turn on your AC for the season, then perhaps that fan motor is just a little bit stuck and it just needs a little push to get it going, and it might run just fine for the rest of the year. And to do that, all you need is just a long stick or maybe a long screwdriver. You could even use like a drill bit extension like this. You reach in between the grates and you just give that fan blade a push, just to get it going. As the unit is running, you should be able to hear the compressor running when this is happening. And the direction that you want to push the blades is so that the blades are facing downwards. So whatever way you're pushing it, make sure the blades are scooping the air, so they're facing down the direction that they're going into. You want the fan to be pushing the air up. But let's say that you go to push the fan blade like that, and that thing, it barely even moves. Usually when you push it, it should spin pretty freely. If you go to push it and it just barely moves, or maybe it doesn't move at all, that means that fan motor is locked up and you will need to replace that condenser fan motor. And if you are not sure if your condenser fan motor is bad or not, I do have a video where I talk about how to check if it's bad or not to confirm it. And if you get a new motor and the wires are different than the old one, I also have a video on how to wire a condenser fan motor, whether it be 3 wires or 4 wires. So if you find yourself stuck with that problem, that video will help you out. Lastly, if you need an example to see how it's done, I have a video where I replaced the motor on this unit right here, and you can watch exactly how I do it, and I tell you some tips and tricks along the way. Well, there we have it. Those were the top 5 AC problems. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to mash that like button on the way out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And if you're still here and not in the comment section below, let me tell you a quick story about an old couple. One day, the man is sitting at the table, drinking some coffee for breakfast and reading a newspaper, when his wife walks into the room and she looks out the window and she's like, "Wow, The neighbor is hanging up some white linens on the clothes drying line, but they're still dirty. What a silly woman. Someone really needs to teach her how to clean stuff. She didn't even wash it properly and she's already trying to dry it. George, come take a look at this. This is ridiculous. So George gets up, he looks out the window, and he says absolutely nothing. He just sits back down and keeps reading the newspaper. The wife just shrugs and walks off. In a week, the same exact thing happens again. She's looking out the window and she's like, George, this is ridiculous. Somebody should tell her that the linens are still dirty. And once again, George just looks out the window, says nothing, keeps reading his newspaper. A week later, George, again, drinking coffee, reading a newspaper. The wife walks in, looks out the window, and she says, this is unbelievable. What a crazy woman. And finally, George has enough. He abruptly stands up, interrupts her, goes, grabs a rag, comes up to the window and wipes it down real well. And then he calls her over and he tells her, honey, it's not the linens that are dirty, it's the window.